Hello, everybody. This is the SMC Journal podcast. This is the show that's all about performance engineering, all aspects in IT today. I'm Scott Moore, your host. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our topic is about AI ops. Now, that's something that I've heard as some lingo that I've been reading lately, and of course, I've been wanting to talk about this for quite some time. And a lot of people have asked me questions about that, especially because we see AI ops in relation to APM and observability and monitoring, because there are companies now claiming that you can use machine learning and AI in IT operations to make your life better, especially if you're a DevOps organization and you're having to deal with a lot of complex applications and a lot of data. So I did a little bit of research on it, but I still had questions. And that's when I reached out to the LinkedIn community and found someone who knows more about it than I do, which is what I typically do. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about AI ops and how it relates to performance engineering. But before we do, let's talk about the great sponsors that make this show happen. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Performance Lab. They're a provider of premier load and performance testing services for enterprises in all industries. They focus on a robust methodology, tools, and the experienced engineers that know what they're doing. Since 2008, they have built a reputation for reliability worldwide. BoomQ is their own innovative performance testing platform. However, they also consult around many industry standard load testing tools like JMeter, LoadRunner, and others. Find out more at performancelabus.com. This episode is sponsored by Total Performance Consulting. They provide the highest quality performance engineering, automation, QA, and development services possible, and they've been doing so since 2006. With hundreds of years of combined experience in performance engineering, they've helped countless companies tackle and solve complex performance challenges. They can help you with your application performance testing, analysis, remediation, infrastructure evaluation, monitoring setup and analysis, performance testing in a CI/CD pipeline, and many other services that will help your company get, keep, and extend your competitive edge. Get more details at totalperform.com. Okay, let's get right back into the show and talk about AI ops. My guest is Heath Newbern of PagerDuty, and Heath has a lot of experience. He was AI ops before AI ops was even a term. I'll let him share more about his story, but I just thought it was great that reaching out to the community abroad and a fellow barbecue lover from Austin would contact me. I wish I would have had the record button when we initially talked on the phone just as introductions, but you'll hear a lot of that in this interview. Let's go ahead and go to that right now. Hey, Heath, how are you doing, sir?
I'm fantastic, Scott. Appreciate the chance to talk to you today.
No, well, thank you for being on the show. You know, I've been wanting to talk about AI ops for weeks, probably months, and I know I've had a lot of questions from my viewers. What is AI ops and how does it figure into performance engineering? So when I kind of reached out and we had a conversation, you were obviously somebody who has a lot of experience with this. I think maybe we should start with you introducing yourself to the audience and how you got involved in AI ops to begin with.
Yeah. Sure. My name's Heath Newbern. I am at PagerDuty right now as a senior solutions consultant around AI ops. I kind of call myself the designated old guy at PagerDuty because I've been doing this an awful long time. So I came up out of the labs at IBM, and I was in testing there. Was a task architect. Came up through product management as a monitoring product manager, then ran the NetCool product management team. Became the North America sales CTO for what was Cloud and Smarter Infrastructure. Doing a lot of IT service management, got tired of getting beat up by ServiceNow. So went and joined a business partner and did some ServiceNow and IBM solutions together. was at Dynatrace for a while, so got more exposure to kind of performance testing, things like that there. And then about February last year, I was looking around for a different gig, and AI ops to me had really been fascinating as the field had grown. And I was looking for a unique approach to it because I think, as we'll talk about, I think this has been one of those areas where you see a lot of overpromise and underdeliver. And how can we begin to change that? I thought was a real challenge.
Well, obviously you've got the experience, so this is going to help me. So I've got tons of questions here, and I know we only have a limited amount of time, but AI ops has been a little bit of a slippery term. I first saw it when Gartner started mentioning it in some of their Magic Quadrant reports, and it's sort of like a underlying baseline foundation for everything that performance builds on top of, especially with APM monitoring and observability platforms. But I know there's more to it than that. Can you describe, just, I guess, at a high level, and then we'll drill down, what exactly is AI ops, and then would I, as a performance engineer, care about that?
Sure. So Gartner actually coined the term, and it actually started not as artificial intelligence, but as algorithmic IT operations. So good way to win a bar bet in a tech town. The so it's really is the foundational capabilities is leveraging machine learning and AI that allows us to take a lot of different signals into a single place and figure out what to do with them. At its core function, that's really what it is. The interesting thing is that between companies like 451 Research, Gartner, Forrester, and then obviously all the different vendors in the space, it's interesting. Everybody's kind of has their own definition and their own approach to it. So that's one of the reasons that probably as part of the confusion arises is that pretty much every vendor is raising their hand saying, hey, I'm an AI ops vendor. Even though on the surface you look and go, that didn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, it absolutely is a place that has confusion. I've got some pretty strong viewpoints on what I really think make differentiated capabilities. But in the end, think about it as it's a confluence of a lot of signals into a single place and leveraging systems to help humans make sense of it.
So when I think of AI ops, and I think of what AI can do, I'm thinking of predictive analysis for preventing problems ahead of time, or quickly finding root cause of something where there's so much data or it's so complex that it's going to find it faster than a human could. Is that valid?
Yeah, I think it really is. I think the predictive piece. Let's talk about that for a second because I think that's one of the more interesting places. In that, what we have seen is that it doesn't take systems much to be able to do some. Hey, I'm going to take a stream of data. I'm going to turn and do some linear R-squared regression analysis. I'm going to do some predictive plotting, and you're going to end up here, right? But A, how useful is that, and B, what does that end up telling you? What we tend to see is I see more of the domain specific capabilities on, for example, if I'm really using storage, I probably want some really good storage software that understands the ups and downs of storage as opposed to just, hey, let me plot the free space on a LUN and tell me where it's at, right? To be able to begin to make some of those. It's going to have the capabilities of understanding seasonality and that sort of thing at a closer level than maybe a centralized platform will, right? But it actually is a part of what you want to be able to do is to begin to figure out where those predictive things come from because we want to get ahead of problems. But I think the more interesting place right now, because that what I saw again and again in the life of these predictive tools tended to be that they tended to be very, very overpromised. Right now, if you own the entire value stream of a transaction and know from the client all the way through the edge of the firewall, through the servers, through the backends, all the pieces of it, yeah, you can do some interesting things. And I think there are some tools that have gotten very, very good at that and can absolutely feed the system as part of that. However, those tools also tend to be some of the most expensive ones, right? And tend to be the ones that are the most often interrupting and cause issues with how you begin to look at things on an end-to-end basis on can they even be affecting performance in some cases, right? But being able to do the piece on how do I really take all the different signals, because we think about the layers of complexity. As I go through my network, as I go through the virtualization of the network, as I come up into, the operating system with the multiple containers and the virtualization constructs, and we get into the right. Every single one of those has got a level of monitoring and things around that. And so, as you're trying to peel that onion of a performance problem, being able to have the analysis at each layer of that to say, what are the events being generated around this that I need to be aware of to create better situational awareness, so that I, as a smart performance engineer, can now make better decisions based on that level of situational awareness. That, I think, is really the real promise of AI ops for your audience, Scott.
The obvious use case I see this as far as a tool set would be taking performance test data that where you're gathering a whole bunch of information from a large system, or no longer a monolith but a lot of microservices, and helping to piece the anomalies together that said, you did this performance test and the overall end user timings are fine, but there's an anomaly over here where you need to pay attention to this because it may be fast but it may not be as efficient. Or end user timings may have gone down, but that may have been because of some code that was left out that should have been put in for additional checks. So not necessarily faster is always better. It's the change that's being recognized. And the second piece would be observability. We thought we were gathering a lot of information with APM and all the associated things. Now it's just unreal how much is being gathered on just single applications, the metrics, traces, log, events, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, cloud vendors love that because more stuff is being used; they're being charged for it. But AI ops to help find that needle in a haystack where you just are never going to have time to go through all of that. And the term I've heard it coined as "let the machines figure out the machines." Is that really a possibility where we're at today?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're seeing today. So, because PagerDuty is a SaaS-based platform, we can see all of the data that's coming into those environments, and we actually saw a literal 70% year-over-year increase in the amount of noise being generated in environments. 70%. Compound out in 3 years. That means 3 years from now, we're going to have 3 times the amount of information that we're dealing with today. It really is untenable, Scott. I mean, how can are we ever going to be able to keep up? So that's exactly right. It's being able to turn all of that, the logs, the KPIs, the metrics, the changes, and think about even, you would like to be able to know, to your point, back to what's happening out of synthetics or actual real user monitoring. What are real users actually seeing, and how does that fit in your overall plan on how you want to attack things? I love that, the fact of, we used to always talk about that, the fastest way to make an application move quicker is to drop some of the timings to zero because stuff's broken, right? That becomes really easy then. So you have to marry that picture together, and that's exactly what AI Ops is going to do for us, right? Is to be able to bring in, before you even get into the depths of starting to look at, wow, this looks like something, man, it's really esoteric. Could it be garbage collection? Could be something else going on? And then being able to pull in and go, nope, your synthetic monitor failed. This whole thing is, crashing out on the back end. So there's no sense in even doing that digging. That's the important piece. Think about how many times that you've been brought in to look at an issue when it turns out it was something completely different, and really bringing together that situational awareness across the entire, not only transaction, but really what's happening across all of those services, all the way up to the business, and bringing that to a single place that allows you to have that broader view of where to begin. What is probable origin? Where to begin to look at? Have I seen an issue like this before? Can I come in and look at past incidents very quickly out of what's happening? And to your point, change, right? Wouldn't it be really nice to be able to very quickly surface all of the changes against that service in the environment right up front? Because any of us that have been in ops more than 30 seconds know that problems come from change.
That's right. And so let's say that we implement AI ops successfully, or what we feel like is successfully in our organization. There's a huge leap that has to be made between, okay, AI ops has gotten pretty good at finding things. If it's so smart, why doesn't it just fix everything for me and just tell me about it later? And so we don't even have to worry about that. It's a huge leap and a gap between that. Do you think we'll ever get to that point where we can trust
But
it to do that?
Well, the weird thing is, I actually think it is the trust part is largely a cultural problem. And here's what I mean by that, is that, I go into these financial services institutions, right? And somewhere there's a basement with an MQ system, dropping $150 billion a day through it, and nobody blinks twice. But Lord forbid that, Joey down the hall, it isn't the one that actually presses the button to fail over a cluster. We would hate that. The monkey has to be in the middle, right? But so many things that we know about, there's problem signatures that we know that are very valid to do. If I'm looking at an Nginx cluster, it tends to be about one of 4 or 5 things can be wrong with it. So being able to have that to say, I kind of think about automation as horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Can I get close enough to actually just lob the problem, make it go away? For those of us that are old enough and been in the business, I used to think about, we used to treat our servers as kind of pets, right? If a server got sick, you wanted to know why. You wanted to slowly nurse it back to health. You didn't want it to have, anything to happen again. So you would spend all of this time doing these deep diagnoses and trying to figure out what's going on. Today it's the herd mentality, right? That something in that cluster gets sick, shoot it, turn it over, fail over the cluster, get back in business as quick as you can, because unless it truly is a problem that's going to replicate itself again and again and again, which tools like AIOps will help us understand, then we just want to be in business, right? That's what we want to be in. So part of it is, we absolutely want to be able to have the capability, and I do have clients that are driving down via automated remediation, their response times down to 60 or 90 seconds, which is fantastic. But I think IBM, I want to say, first defined autonomic computing in 1993. And we were all supposed to be sitting on beaches drinking daiquiris, and folks like you and me were going to be out of jobs because, things were just going to run themselves, right? And last I checked, that hasn't happened. So we work in highly complex environments. So things like root cause, for example, I think often tend to be a misnomer. When you look at, for example, whenever a plane crashes, they found again and again that it's generally a line of about 6 to 7 failures, of which maybe one's mechanical and more human. But it had to be a series of events. And I often think about, it's the same kind of thing with what we do, is that it generally is a series of events. So being able to pull those apart and quickly understand where to remediate in highly complex environments becomes really difficult. So I think a big stepping stone in that is things like automated diagnostics, right? We often make that leap, to your point, right to the end of where, I'm going to go ahead and just get fixed. And now I'm going to think is the 90 reasons that that's going to fail. What instead, if I say, well, Scott is my super smart network guy, and every time Scott gets on a bridge, he's going to do a netstat and a trace route and a hop view and an if config and an IP config and dump virtual switch. Well, if Scott's going to do all those things anyway, why isn't it just sitting there waiting for you, right? So when you can jump into an incident and start on, slide, page 6 or 7 of your run book, as opposed to step 1. And that's what we begin to think about is automation in that way, and thinking about automation as a maturity model that starts again with enabling smart humans to move quicker is a great thing. And then, by the way, we can start to see the problem signatures of, all right, now let's go back and do the analysis of what responses will run. And that helps us build that automation runbook. So I think it's a continuum, right? It's a maturity model that we're going to grow up to. But I think we're still, I saw a vendor the other day that was advertising, we make IT a black box. And I'm like, tell me you've never worked in ops without telling me you've never worked in ops, right? It's never a black box in these complex environments, which is the reason we need performance engineers, the reason we need great engineers, the reason we need SRE and DevOps teams to keep things going, with all of their knowledge and years of experience.
The one thing I keep hearing from every vendor that with any new product in this realm is things continue to get more complex, and the complexity is a necessity. And I do believe that. And as we advance further into this, we need more testing, more monitoring, more everything. Do you believe that in the near future, or we're getting there sooner than later, that for at least the Global 2000, for top performing organizations, they're going to have AI ops as part of their operations, or they're going to fall behind? You think that's a game changer, or something that's going to make them a leading organization?
I think it's the only way to survive, right? Like we talked about, just through the pure increase of noise. When we talk about the golden signals and stuff that are growing, nobody's environments are getting simpler, right? I think that's a fair statement. And to that end, as we constantly want to instrument more and instrument more and instrument more. Now, the interesting thing is, none of us want more data, I think the only people that want us to have more data are storage salespeople, so they can, sell us the place to put it.
That's right.
But what we need is, and what we're dying for, is context. We're dying for real actionable, intelligence and actionable information. And so the real key to success is creating and identifying that context, building the situational awareness, getting actionable intelligence, and then as much as possible, letting the machines take the actions for us where appropriate. And because I think that's the only way that that high performing organizations are going to stay high performing. Because if you think about, you've got to grow as an organization, and it's great that Scott's been here for 20 years and knows where all the bodies are buried and can tell you what that Dogfox 977 error in MySQL means at a glance. But when Heath is the new dumb guy comes on the team and joins it, I don't know what any of that means, and it shouldn't be where I just always have to turn around and call Scott. That just slows everything down. So that's the only way, not only that organizations have to remain performant, it's the only way they're going to grow.
Somebody listening to this interview goes, oh, you know what? We're probably behind. We need to look into this AI ops stuff. Where would you recommend somebody first take a look at, or vendors or different things that to get started understanding what they might need?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at in that maturity model, and where you are trying to affect business outcomes, right? So my biggest thing is thinking about, you've got to go put a piece of paper on your boss's desk at the end of this year and says, hey, because we chose the right technology, because we sweated the details, we had the right partners, here's proof that we're a better team now than we were last year. What's on that piece of paper? What are you going to think about? What do you want your team to be known for? And I think that will start to guide you down the right path. So for example, if it's, hey, we really need better detailed observability on these kinds of transactions to get the kinds of answers we need, that's going to inform you in one way, versus, hey, I've already got all the monitoring I need, now I just need something that makes sense of it. That's going to go another way. So there's some good blogs, there's some good folks out that are doing stuff. I find I actually keep a tweet deck with Twitter on AI ops as a topic. There's some really smart folks that are out blogging about that and things right now. There are some good resources from Gartner, just put out a market guide for AIOps to kind of talk about the selection and capabilities from it. GigaOM just released their radar right now of their top AIOps vendors and kind of broke down their, the pluses and minuses of each of them. So those are good places to start to at least understand the landscape. But it is fascinating. If you look at G2 Grid, Forrester, GigaOM, and a couple others, what you'll find is it's a pretty broad landscape. Again, back to the kind of the confusing part. So I think it is, I'm happy to talk to anybody, about kind of where they're at in their journey, what they're looking for. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, would love to start a conversation there as well.
Great. We'll share those links and everything on the show notes as well. Heath, great conversation, and I've learned a lot. Now you got me wanting to go back and do some research myself, figure this out. I do get a lot more questions about this. Almost every week I get questions about it. So thank you again for being on the SMC Journal podcast with us today.
And Scott, thanks so much. I had a chance to go back and listen to several of these, and kind of listening, understand more about your show and stuff. I think you're doing a tremendous job. My only comment is I think we need a little more barbecue content. I think that was really lacking, and it's something we'll definitely need to have a follow-up on in the very near future, because I think barbecue and performance testing and barbecue and AI ops always go together. So
I completely agree with you, and we'll take that to note. And in some context, you will start seeing more barbecue pictures from me more often. How about that?
Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much, man. Enjoyed our time.
Thank you. Hey, another barbecue fan, another friend. That's what I say. Thank you for watching today's show. I'd like to know what you think about AI ops. Are you using it today in your organization, or are you interested in using AI ops? Does this interview help you understand it just a little bit better? I'd like to know your answer to that. You can reach me at scottmoore.consulting, also through LinkedIn, Twitter. If you like this kind of video and you want to see more and find out when new episodes appear, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe and hit the like button and the bell and all that good stuff, and that'll catch you up on everything that I'm doing. And I'm actually putting out a lot of shows. You can also reach me at help@scottmoore.consulting. This podcast comes out twice a week currently, Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That channel also has episodes of the Performance Tour, highlights, and other things that may come out, like on the road segments or things like that. So you get a lot of content that's coming out. I know some of you can't keep up. That's okay. It's always there for you to watch it later. But let me know what you think about AI Ops and this episode. And for this SMC Journal podcast, that's all we have. This is Scott Moore saying thank you again for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.